The taking, the observation deck of the Krask warship Void Talon overlooked the small colony world like a predator watching prey. Commander Zelthar's four eyes gleamed with satisfaction as his scanning crew identified potential targets below. Another primitive settlement, his second officer reported, mandibles clicking with amusement. The humans build their homes so far apart. No defensive clusters, no shielding. Zelthar had conducted 43 such operations across the outer rim. The Krask Dominion had perfected the art of acquisition, taking children from weaker species before they learned to fear the stars. By the time these younglings understood what had happened, they would already be loyal subjects of the Dominion, their original languages and memories carefully erased. Humans were the newest addition to the galactic community, barely 3 generations since first contact. They had no territory worth claiming, no technology worth stealing, and no military worth fearing. Perfect candidates. Target the isolated structures, Zelthar commanded. Residential zones. Standard extraction parameters. The beam lanced down through the evening sky of New Haven Colony, a planet humans had settled only 12 years prior. Most residents were miners, engineers, and their families, people who had chosen the frontier life for its freedom and opportunity. In a modest home on the colony's eastern ridge, Emma Chen sat at her desk working through a mathematics problem. At 8 years old, she had her mother's dark eyes and her father's stubborn concentration. She barely noticed the first rumble. The second rumble shook her pencils to the floor. By the third, her mother Sarah was already running down the hallway. "Emma, get away from the window!" But Sarah Chen, veteran of the Luna Defensive Corps, saw the tractor beam too late. The Krask technology was faster than anything humanity had encountered in their limited time among the stars. One moment Emma was reaching for her mother's outstretched hand. The next, she was ascending through her bedroom ceiling in a column of amber light, her scream swallowed by the energy field. Sarah's own scream tore through the house. She crashed through the hole in the roof, grabbing at air, at nothing, at the fading light that carried her daughter skyward. Her husband Marcus arrived seconds later, catching Sarah before she fell from the damaged roof, both of them watching helplessly as the Krask vessel accelerated into the darkness. Commander Zelthar reviewed the evening's acquisitions with satisfaction. 11 younglings from 3 different settlements, including 7 humans. The human specimens were particularly interesting. Their neural plasticity remained high longer than most species. "Log the coordinates," he instructed. "Mark this system as compliant. No resistance encountered." He didn't notice the detail his sensors had recorded. In that small house on the eastern ridge, both adult humans wore clothing with strange markings, military insignia from their world's various conflicts, service records, commendations. The Krask had abducted children from merchants, from farmers, from peaceful traders across a dozen species, but they had never taken the child of soldiers who still knew how to fight. In the ruins of Emma's bedroom, Sarah Chen stood perfectly still. The wild panic had drained from her face, replaced by something colder. Marcus recognized that expression. He'd seen it before, during the Outer Colony War, when she'd led her unit through situations others called impossible. "Get the communications array," she said quietly. "Every frequency we have." "Sarah." "Now, Marcus." Her voice carried the same tone that had once commanded a company of Marines. "They took our daughter. They think we're weak. They think we'll just accept this." Marcus was already moving toward their workshop, where their personal communication equipment linked to the colony's broader network. As an engineer who had designed defensive systems for 3 frontier worlds, he knew exactly what his wife was planning. Sarah stared at the stars through the hole in her ceiling, her hands steady despite the rage burning through her veins. The galaxy had treated humanity like the newest, weakest species in the cosmic pecking order. The established powers had smiled and nodded and waited for humans to learn their place. They were about to learn something else instead. Humans didn't have the biggest ships. They didn't have the most advanced weapons. They didn't have centuries of galactic influence or ancient alliances. But they had something the Krask Dominion had failed to account for, something that no amount of technology could predict or prepare for. They had parents who would burn the galaxy down to get their children back. The message Sarah Chen was about to send would reach every human settlement, every mining operation, every trading post, and every mothballed military depot from Earth to the Outer Rim. It would wake up people who had put down their weapons to build new lives. It would unite strangers who shared only one thing in common: They were human, and someone had taken one of their children. The Krask thought they had taken a helpless little girl from a primitive backwater world. They had no idea they'd just started a war. The awakening. The message spread through human space like wildfire through dry grass. Sarah Chen's transmission was simple. No political speeches, no calls for diplomacy, just a mother's voice steady and cold explaining what had happened. The coordinates, the ship's signature, the name Krask Dominion, and then 3 words that would echo across 100 worlds. Bring her home. In the asteroid mining fields of Epsilon Station, a crew of 40 miners heard the broadcast during their shift change. Their foreman, a scarred woman named Victoria Kane, had lost her own son to an industrial accident 5 years prior. She understood the mathematics of grief. She also understood that the galaxy respected only one language. "Shut down the extractors," she ordered. "We're retooling." Her crew stared at her. "Retooling for what?" Victoria's smile was thin and dangerous. "Our mining lasers cut through solid nickel iron. Krask armor can't be much harder." Within 18 hours, Epsilon Station had transformed from a mining operation into something else entirely. 40 miners became 40 soldiers, their industrial equipment becoming makeshift weapons. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't military grade, but it would cut through hull plating just fine. Across the settled worlds, similar transformations began. On Kepler Station, a freight hauler captain named James Rodriguez heard the message while loading cargo containers. He had never met Sarah or Marcus Chen. He had never been to New Haven Colony, but he had a daughter too. She was 6 years old. He looked at his crew. "How fast can we strip the cargo bay and mount those old defensive cannons?" His pilot, a young woman named Ara, raised an eyebrow. "The ones we bought for scrap? Those haven't been fired in 20 years. Then we test them on the way." James pulled up a star chart tracing the route the Krask ship had taken. "Because we're going hunting." The response wasn't coordinated. There was no central command, no unified military force. Humanity was still too new, too scattered, too individualistic for that kind of organization. But that was exactly what made them dangerous. Within 72 hours of Sarah's broadcast, 19 ships had changed course. Mining vessels, freight haulers, 3 personal yachts owned by wealthy colonists who had served in Earth's various conflicts, even a small passenger liner, hastily retrofitted with weapons that violated a dozen galactic regulations. None of them asked for permission. None of them waited for government approval. They simply went. Commander Zelthar was reviewing the new acquisitions when his communication officer interrupted with unusual urgency. "Commander, we're receiving multiple warnings from galactic monitoring stations. There's unusual movement in human space." Zelthar barely looked up. "Define unusual." "Civilian vessels changing course, heading toward the outer rim, toward our last operational area." Now Zelthar focused. "How many vessels?" "At least 20, Commander. Perhaps more. They're not using military transponders, but the movement pattern is coordinated." Zelthar's mandibles clicked in something like amusement. "The humans are mounting a rescue operation? With civilian ships?" He accessed the specifications humanity had registered with galactic authorities. "Their vessels are rated for cargo and passenger transport. No significant weaponry. No military shielding." His second officer seemed less certain. "Should we alert the fleet?" "For 20 unarmed civilian vessels." Zelthar turned back to his work. "Maintain our course. If they approach, we'll disable their engines and remind them why weaker species don't challenge the Dominion." What Zelthar didn't understand, what the galactic powers had failed to recognize, was that humans had spent thousands of years perfecting a particular skill. They had survived ice ages and plagues, predators and disasters, wars and extinction events. They had learned to adapt, to improvise, to turn anything into a weapon when survival demanded it. A mining laser became a cutting beam. A cargo hauler's towing mechanism became a grappling system. Navigation deflectors, designed to push aside space debris, could be overloaded to create concussive pulses, and humans who had put away their weapons to build peaceful lives remembered very quickly how to fight. On the Void Talon, Emma Chen sat in a sterile white cell with 6 other children. 3 were Thixians with their delicate blue skin and large eyes. 2 were Korthan, small and furred. 1 was human, a boy named David who couldn't stop crying. Emma held his hand. She didn't cry. Her mother had taught her that fear was acceptable, but panic accomplished nothing. "They're going to make us forget," David whispered. "The Thixians told me. They erase your memories. Make you think you've always been Krask?" Emma looked at the door, studying its mechanisms with the same focus she applied to math problems. "My mom was a soldier. My dad builds defensive systems. They're not going to let us go. But we're so far away. How will they find us?" Emma squeezed his hand. "Because that's what humans do. We don't give up. We don't surrender, and we don't leave anyone behind." She believed it with the absolute certainty of childhood, but she couldn't know that her words were already proving true, that across human space, strangers were risking everything for children they'd never met. She couldn't know that her mother's message had awakened something the galaxy hadn't seen from humanity before. Not their diplomatic face, not their eager curiosity, but something older and more dangerous. The protective fury of a species that had clawed its way to sentience through a million generations of refusing to quit. Commander Zelthar would learn. The Krask Dominion would learn. The entire galactic community would learn. Humanity's weakness was a myth, and myths once shattered could never be put back together.